Hello everybody, welcome to Aric Talks, the show where I talk about things that are important to me. And look, I am back in my old setup. It is a 3-day weekend, one of the first that I've had in a while, and so I'm back home from college. And I decided to make a video I've wanted to make for a while. Sorry it has taken so long for me to get around to this, but it's one I needed to get right. Now, as the name and the title suggests, we're gonna get heavy today. And so let's start off with some slightly less political news. First thing I want to talk about today is some absolute silliness in the form of the new Power Rangers trailer, which actually looks, pretty good. I never got into the show very much myself back in the day when it was a thing. I think I kind of missed that curve, but hey, the movie looks pretty good. It seems to be sticking true to the original as well as offering some new updates. Cinematography looks pretty cool, the actors seem pretty good, and it's not directed by Michael Bay, so that's a plus.
No, don't jump. Jason! That's not a piece of cake!
Next up on today's docket is the Apple versus Samsung court case. So Apple and Samsung have been locked into a patent battle for a really long time. Now, according to an article on Recode, a popular technology website, Apple has been arguing that Samsung's early Android devices were essentially efforts to copy the iPhone and is expected to argue that the current method of calculating damages makes sense, especially in this case. So as that explains, Apple is claiming that early Android devices were essentially just trying to copy the iPhone, trying to make their own version and selling. Now, patent supposedly makes that type of thing illegal, but when you're talking about a technology as complicated as an iPhone, patents become murky waters. It's also important to note that when the article is talking about the current method of calculating damages, they are talking about nearly $400 million. This is also significant because it is also one of the first patent cases the Supreme Court has heard in a number of years. So you got the technology side of things, you got the Supreme Court dealing with something it's not really used to, and it's just this whole hoopla. And this is only one of many lawsuits that Apple and Samsung are currently engaged in. Now, this kind of makes me feel bad for Samsung because they just cannot catch a break. On the one hand, they have all these lawsuits happening, and on the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 is still blowing up. It's gotten so bad, in fact, that Samsung has actually sent out fireproof cases so that people can put their Samsungs in those cases and mail them back to the company. I mean, this just isn't a normal recall. This is just like absolute insanity. I'm really curious how Samsung is going to survive all of this madness. You have your phones blowing up. You have lawsuits out the wazoo. How are you still a company? All right, that about wraps up the news portion of the show. Now it's time to think deep. Okay, today for the Think Deep segment, I'm going to be talking about something that I'm not really super excited about talking about, but it's something that I think has been very important in this election season. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about it anyway. So today we are going to be talking about politics and religious ideology. If you live in America, you have a religious ideology. I would argue that you have a religious ideology no matter what, but doubly so in America. Religion is a fundamental part of our culture. Our revolution was justified by the idea that all men were endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Religious thought, particularly westernized Judeo-Christian religious thought, is a fundamental part of America's societal fabric, from our morality to our politics to pretty much everything. And because it's so embedded in our cultural life, you kind of have to have an opinion on it. So whether you're Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, agnostic, or a secular humanist, you have this idea of who God is, what the universe is, and our human relationship to that God and to that universe. Whether you believe that there's an intimate personal God, whether you believe that there's some mythological force in the universe, or whether you simply believe that there is no God and men must stumble through life, you have these notions of who God is, what the universe is, and our human relationship to that God and to that universe. You have a religious ideology. Now, this is kind of important because our Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, this means that Congress can in no way regulate religion. However, religion certainly can regulate Congress and the entire political culture, in fact. Churches, since the conception of our country, have been places of political workings. So we as a country have this culture in which our political identity and our religious identity are fundamentally intertwined. Now, this is important because it leads to some interesting relationships between religious ideologies and the two major political parties of the day, Republicans and Democrats. Our profoundly religious history has led to the idea that if you are a certain religion, you must be a certain political party. It has led to the idea that good evangelical Christians are good Republicans, and that good Republicans are good evangelical Christians. It has also led to the idea that good agnostics are good Democrats, though good Democrats do not necessarily need to be good agnostics. So you have this very bizarre situation in which certain political parties are assumed to inherently represent certain religious ideologies. Now, if you've been following the news lately, you probably realize that this has led to some very uncomfortable situations, because a lot of good evangelical Christians are having trouble being good Republicans, because being a good Republican means supporting the Republican candidate for president. Donald Trump has been spending a lot of time saying a lot of things that aren't very Christian. He makes comments about objectifying women, not just 11 years ago, but also very recently. He's saying that we should ignore the refugee crisis, a crisis that is made up primarily of widows and orphans, something the Bible very explicitly tells you to protect. A lot of Christian leaders have been saying we just need to swallow the pill and vote for Donald Trump because, after all, he is the Christian moral candidate. Now, don't get me wrong, there are reasons to vote for Trump. There are industrial workers in the Rust Belt who would be disenfranchised by certain free trade deals that Donald Trump has promised to fight against. And the 50-50 shot of Donald Trump keeping his promise and appointing a conservative Supreme Court is pretty appealing to a lot of people. But it's important to remember that these are political arguments, not theological arguments. There is nothing inherent about any of Donald Trump's stances that are particularly Christian in nature. You gotta remember, there was no point in which Jesus Christ descended from heaven and said to Abraham Lincoln, "And this shall be my party." Now, I have been talking a lot about Christianity and Republicans because, let's face it, that's what's been in the news lately. But it's important to remember that whether you are Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or agnostic or secular humanist or any other political ideology, if you know and are comfortable with the moral implications of your religious ideology, by all means, vote with your religious convictions. It's your responsibility to vote with your religious convictions. But it's dangerous to assume that a political candidate is in line with your religious convictions by virtue of being a member of a particular party. For evangelical Christians, there are going to be a lot of Republicans who don't represent your interests. There might even be a few who aren't even pro-life. But then again, we wouldn't know anything about that, would we? And agnostics and secular humanists. There are Democrats who would love to see prayer return to public schools. A candidate will not automatically support those religious beliefs just because they are part of a particular political party. When you are voting, it is important to think critically, to be educated, and to vote with your brain, not with your habits. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. You are a beautiful human being. Try to change the world today. And as always, sincerely yours, Aric Wood. Congratulations, you've made it to the end of the video. If you've been here for a while, you know the drill. If not, click on the tiny tree of subscription to subscribe and click on the channel globe to go watch more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.